Presumpscot Level Advisory Committee meeting on today's Thursday, February 25th. It's 5:34 p.m. My name is Roberto Rodriguez. I'm the chair of one of the co-chairs of the committees. I know that Councillor Ali, the other co-chair, he has a standing conflict with the with one of the task forces that he's serving with the city council. So he's already made us aware of that. So on tonight's agenda, we have we did not approve the previous meetings minutes, the ones from November. So why don't we do that? And then after that, we'll review the January minutes. So maybe we can get the Zoom back to, how do you say, the grid so that we can take a quick
screen off. Roberto, we did not include the November meeting, so give me a minute to go find them and put them in here, and then we can.
I went back. You're right; they're not uploaded. I went back myself and saw them. Should have said something. Yeah,
that's all right. Why don't you approve the January ones, and I will go look for them.
So let's do that. So we're going to then the January 28th minutes. Do we have a motion to approve them? How are we doing? Just like a physical raise your hand, and then I'll acknowledge whoever made the motion. All right. So is there a motion? See Elizabeth. Second. Any second? Yeah, Angie, raise her hand. All those in favor, or rather, any questions about the minutes? No? Any comments about the minutes? All those in favor just indicate, and we can probably raise our hands on the screen. And if there's no objections, we'll take that as a unanimous vote. All right? And we're just waiting for Superintendent to upload the November 19th minutes.
1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Who's taking our notes for this meeting?
Doug always. Doug and Emily do that.
I'm sorry, my vote, I needed to abstain from that one because I wasn't here for that meeting. So I'm still waiting to vote on the November. So if the notes can reflect that I abstained from voting on the January minutes.
Can you see if, I just put it in the chat, if you can open that, see if that actually works. I don't know if it does. It does? Okay, great. Then you got them.
All right, good. So we have them. That means that they're in our system. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 19th, 2020? All right, we have Anne, and any second? Laura. And any questions on the minutes? No? Any comments? All those in favor, just indicate just by raising your hand quickly. And that also, if we don't hear objection, is unanimous. Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. All right, let me get my screen back to today's minutes. Good. Well, I guess I'm about to hand it off to Mark and the team for an update. What we'll do today is get an update on the budget, the commissioning, and then talk a little bit about next steps. So this is, I think, as we've learned, a point where the speed of the timeline starts to get a little bit faster or grab some traction. So Mark, I'll hand it to you to get us going. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Roberto. So good evening, everyone. Great to see all of you. We have a fairly limited agenda, but some important stuff to go over. And some of the aspect of the fact that we'll kind of bring up to speed on what's been happening so far. We're really getting ready. The exciting part is that we're really getting close to the point of putting the projects out to bid, and I think everyone knows the schedule. We've gone through it. That Longfellow is the first one out to bid, and that's imminent. That's sort of within a very short period of time. And then the second one is Reiki, and then the third one is Presumpscot. So we're going to start to see. We're really concentrating a lot on all the steps that have to be in place to get these projects ready for contractors to bid on, and so we'll talk about a little bit about some of those steps tonight here. Some of the details and other design considerations that we explored a little bit last time. We'll continue to explore that with the Presumpscot. So at our next BLAC meeting, we'll have a few more design updates for you folks as well. But with that, our agenda tonight is I think you can see it before you here. We've already done the minutes, and so our next piece is going to be just a project update, which doesn't have, like I said, a lot of content there. The big thing is going to be the fact that we've entered the planning board process for the school. So that's a necessary approval we need as we get close to putting this out to bid as well. And then we'll give you a quick update on the project budget and where that is. And then there's a step called commissioning. We'll explain what commissioning is. And then we'll talk about just where we are in getting this project ready to go out to bid. So like I said, a fairly brief agenda, but some opportunities to be informed on a few very important areas. So as I mentioned, the Presumpscot project is right now on the agenda for March 9th for our planning board workshop. And it typically is a 2-night process for the planning board. The first one is a workshop of the planning board. We also have a conditional use permit, and it's not the full site plan review. What that means is there's a in the ordinance itself, it says, okay, well, you can do certain things, but you need conditional approval to do those things. And so that's the aspect that we're going for approval for in this first workshop. It'll tie into the public hearing and the full site review by the planning board in the most likely the next planning board meeting. So this is also in line with Longfellow is happening first, and then we actually had this project further along, even though Reiki bids next. We're in the queue first or before Reiki for the planning board approvals. So that's we've been working with the planning board staff to get everything ready for that. And so if folks are interested, they can watch online on March 9th to see that proceeding. The other area that we really have been focusing on is looking at the project budgets in sort of a comprehensive review of all the parts. And so we know we have a certain amount allocated for the construction cost for Presumpscot. And now, in addition to that, we've looked at all the line items in the project scope. So we call those soft costs. And soft costs are, we sometimes think like the hard cost is if you took a building and you kind of flipped it upside down, everything that kind of fell out of it is sort of not part of the building itself, and so it's not part of the construction cost. So in addition to all the furniture and everything that's not part of the construction cost, there's the cost to hire Harriman, and then there are other consultants to test the soils and to do the survey for the building, and there's construction testing that happens during the course of the construction, and we'll kind of share some of those, and you do have the rundown in your in this presentation earlier. This right here is just the overview of the total project for all of the 4 BFOF projects. And so as we looked at the course of this over time, I think you recall back in February, just about a year ago now, that we established the scheme or scenario 1A as the classroom scenarios, and the amount allocated to Presumpscot for the total project was $13 million. And so the original budget back when the numbers were being put together for the BFOF bond, this was back in 2017, it was 13.6 million total project. So and that had built up from a construction cost of about 12 million, and then it had soft costs on top of it as well. So that was the original. And what's important in this is that it broke out a lot of these other costs. So it had the construction costs, it had the pricing for the what we call FFE, the furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. Those are all the pieces that new furniture for areas that are new, and audiovisual equipment, and that and some other components of instructional technology that go into that budget right there. And we typically set aside about 3 to 4% of the construction dollar value to provide those. We also have contingencies built into it, and I think we talked about this before, but what we do is we hold a 10% contingency, and we split that into two parts. That 10%, it's 10% of the construction cost, and we split it into two parts. One, 5% we reserve for bidding, and should we need it to accommodate any market fluctuations in pricing as we get ready to award the project. And the other 5% we hold on to for the construction. If we don't need the 5% for bidding it, that comes available potentially to award to alternates or to hold on to through the duration of the project to be able to use for other things, potentially for furnishings or things such as that. And then we have the fees and services, which I kind of talked about there, the architects and engineers fees to do the work. And then there are a bunch of other permitting fees and survey and construction testing. One of them is called commissioning. We'll talk a little bit about that. Those typically run around 15% total for all of that. The architect's fees, the total for the architect's fees are somewhere around 8 to 9% on a project typically. So when we signed up these projects and wrote the contracts back in 2019, we made assumptions on what the costs of the project were going to be there, and that was looking at a reallocation after we did the license project. And so, again, it had the same basic categories. It had administrative fees, it had the project reserves, and it had the construction amounts. And they were different from the BFOF numbers because at that time, again, we had sort of a redistribution, and we looked at when the projects were going to occur in time, and we redistributed the construction amounts. And every time you change the construction amounts, some of these other numbers change because they're built as a percentage of the construction cost. At that time, the total project cost for the Presumpscot School project was $13 million, or just under 12.935. And so this is our most recent reconciled project, and so this most recent project budget takes the information on our estimated construction cost that we established for the Presumpscot School project. That's $9.75 million. That's been consistent from when we established the classroom scenario 1A. And then we add on the soft costs that are percentages of the construction, or they were also numbers that were carried in the original BFOF budget. And interestingly enough, as we reconciled all that, we came, the sort of bottom line number came to 12.987134. And again, that's these are budgets, and so they'll change a little bit here and there, but we're working against a $13 million project budget, and so we're just a hair under that right now. And so that pretty much means that we kind of have reconciled the budget. We're on budget right now, assuming a $9.75 million construction cost. That contingency right now is $975,000, at 10% of that construction cost. And so that's where we have approximately $500,000 set aside for the bid contingency at this point, and $500,000 for the construction contingency at this point. So that's money that we'll look at, particularly as we get ready to, as we receive bids and look if we need to use that to award the project or potential alternates. Where that fits into the big picture of all of the different projects is that Longfellow has a construction cost of $10.5 million and a project cost of essentially $14 million. It's just $20,000 under that as well. Presumpscot was, as we talked, $9.75 million construction and $13 million project. Reiki is $15.75 million construction and $20.3 million project. Originally, we anticipated that the total project cost for Reiki would be about 21 million. So that one came in a little bit lower than what we originally had forecast. And And that's just because the soft cost ended up being a little bit less than that 25% that we typically use. The subtotal of those is our $36 million construction. That's what we're getting ready to bid right now, and a total project cost of $47.2 million. When we add on the Lyseth project, which was a construction value of $14 million at construction cost and $16.8 million project cost, that puts our total project cost right now at $64,084,181. The bond that was approved by the voters is $64,260,136, and so right now there's a small reserve of almost $176,000. So that right now is how we've allocated the funds by each school, and now we're tracking them as we get ready to go out to bid. Are there questions? I'll pause for a moment if there are any questions on the project budgets.
And because we're sharing screens, you can probably just unmute yourself and jump right in.
All right. Exciting stuff, I know. All right. Next, Lisa's going to talk a little bit about what commissioning is, a commissioning service, and what that entails. And so with that, I'll select the next slide here. Lisa?
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you all. So commissioning, as you can read on the screen here, ensures that the buildings are successfully delivered and operated per the different requirements of the project. So what does that mean? Essentially, as we're designing the school, we're putting in different systems, whether it be mechanical, electrical, plumbing. The envelope is seen as a system. And what commissioning does is they work with the design team as we're putting together the documents to make sure that we have achieved as many efficiencies as possible in all of those systems, and provide feedback to the design team. When we get into construction, they are working to make sure that the systems are installed and operating as intended, so that at the end of the day, you have an end product that is operating as it was intended, and something didn't happen in the installation or the sequencing of systems that does not operate to its fullest efficiency or as intended in the documents. This is also a requirement for LEED. It is a prerequisite. So it has to be done in order to be a LEED certified building. And so that, but it's also best practice to make sure that the systems, again, are functioning as efficiently as intended. You can see some of the benefits on the screen here. There's multiple benefits, but the one that I think really jumps out and kind of solidifies why it is a best practice is it can improve new building energy performance by 8 to 30% of the building. And these are the different typical systems that you will commission in a building. It started out mostly mechanical and has kind of grown from there. We really get into lighting controls and plumbing systems, and most recently, it's become very common practice to commission the building envelope and making sure that as the different systems are put together, again, they're operating as intended, making sure that there's no air leakage through the envelope where it shouldn't be, and making sure that we have continuous insulation within the walls.
Are there any questions on commissioning for Lisa before we conclude with where we are with next steps and open up for any other questions?
Not on commissioning, but I maybe do the next steps and then I'll ask my question.
Absolutely. So we have a series of meetings coming up. We have a safety and security meeting to review the strategies behind both the technology aspects of security, but also some of the other passive systems and also the operational aspects of safety, and sort of really ensuring that building design is complementing the procedures that the district uses for its safety and security. So that is coming up. We have interviews with the position that's called Clerk of the Works, and that is a position that assists during construction. They're there on site taking pictures of it regularly, so that there's a recording of what the contractor is doing, and that's very helpful as we track their progress and ensure that the contractor is making the schedule and also that they're generally following all the requirements of the contract. We have a school board workshop on March 2nd. There was and that workshop will be a first reading of the Reiki school project, because that's this next one to go out to bid. It'll be a final reading of permission to go out to bid on the Longfellow project. And so we haven't yet established the dates of the workshop for Presumpscot, but at our next BLAC meeting, we'll provide those so everyone has a sense of when we're seeking permission to go to bid on the Presumpscot school project. Our next, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that I just looked it up based on the April 29th date that's in the schedule, and so it would be up for a first read on April 6th, and a workshop on April 6th, and then a approval on April 20th.
Great, thank you. We'll actually add that to the schedules here. So thank you very much. Yeah. The other, so our next DABC meeting, District Advisory Building Committee meeting, is going to be March 18th. That's following our pattern of the third Thursday in March for the DABC, and then we'll have our BLAC meeting March 25th, and so that will be right after I guess that'll be 1 week. That's the fourth Thursday, so it'll be 1 week after the DABC meeting. And our order on that one is that we'll have the 6:30 time slot. So, and we will at that time bring folks up to speed on a few more of the design. We saw that one image from the lobby. We'll have some additional interior images at that time. I know we had a good conversation on some of the considerations. There was, I believe, I think, Jennifer, it was you that asked about, can we incorporate aspects of the Blue Wave into the design? And so we've been kind of contemplating how to integrate those. And so we'll come back with some thoughts on that at that time, and show you more areas that are really exciting. We really get excited. The area around the addition in the back where the kindergarten and pre-K rooms are, and the new lobby area for the cafeteria. And those areas of the design itself. So we'll share those with you in addition to that lobby photo or rendering that we showed last time. Are there any questions? So this is just the schedule, if you'll remember, that we have our bid April 29th. We have our bid opening May 27th. So those are still a little ways out. We still have some work to do to get to that point, and groundbreaking anticipated in June.
My question, Mark, was given the Longfellow situation where we had to pare back the new construction portion of that. Is there any reason for the Presumpscot folks to be concerned about that?
So that's an excellent question. So this I don't know if this building level advisory committee is aware, but our presentation to the DABC meeting last week, we identified that there's a portion of the addition on the back of Longfellow that exceeds the budget, and so we're carrying it as an alternate. And And the question now is there any worry about the fact that something like that might happen here? We don't anticipate that at all. It's different circumstance entirely. When we established the budgets, and for those who want to tune in at 7:30, we'll go through this in some level of detail. But on the Longfellow project, when we established the scope back in about a year ago in February and March, we didn't anticipate putting an addition onto Longfellow within our established budget. What we found out is that the renovation costs and our estimate came in a little bit lower, and that was in around the June-July timeframe. And so the estimated construction costs were about $2 million lower than what we had originally thought they were going to be. And so at that time, we looked at putting the addition onto the back of Longfellow. What we did was we included more than the $2 million worth of the budget for that addition, and the construction document estimate identified the fact that the cafeteria and kitchen that we were trying to put on is about a $3.8 million addition, and so that was that's over and above the addition for a pre-K and an ELL and a reading room. So we didn't have anything like that happen here. Our design development budget here was not, we didn't have that same underage to allow us that we would add on more scope.
I see Jennifer's hand is up.
Yes, I guess I have the same concern as the superintendent, and I was wondering when in the process do things either start to come up about budgeting issues, or I know you're saying we're not prepared. There doesn't seem like a big margin on our budget if something does come up later, and I know it's been a concern because we had to cut back a lot last year on the design. Well, I don't think the reserves look like a lot, but that's, if something came up down the road, when would you foresee that? How do we make the decision going forward if something like that comes up again?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So I think there's a couple of, if I don't address the question, please continue to ask. But there's a couple ways in which we look to make sure that we have funds to be able to accommodate the scope of the work. One is that we have the contingency that I talked about, where we've got about $1 million that we carry outside of the scope of our construction itself. So let's say that the construction costs, when the contractors price it and they come in higher than what we anticipated, $500,000 of that we have set aside already to be able to say, okay, if it's anywhere from around 9.75 to the 10.2 and 25, or trying to think here, actually, yeah, that's about 250, somewhere in that ballpark, because we have $500,000 as we've talked about for the contingency for bidding. That still leaves us with another $500,000 for changes that are going to come up during construction. So there's a ability to if there are unforeseen conditions, and we know there will be unforeseen conditions both in the ground and in the existing building, and we've set aside monies enough to cover those changes.
Can I ask a follow-up question? What happens to the bidding money that's not used? If you don't need that bidding money, what happens to it later?
Yeah, and go ahead, Javier.
So that goes into the general project reserve, and then the DABC in collaboration with the BLACs will make decisions about how to allocate. That would be a great problem to have, and that's the process that we would follow. But
that second $500,000 stays with Presumpscot's budget throughout the construction period of time. Okay.
Well, at the end of the entire project, right? Because Presumpscot is supposed to be the first project done. If there were money left over, if we didn't need to access all of that, that would then allow us to do something that would have been an alternate for Longfellow or BLAC.
But not an alternate for Presumpscot. If we didn't use all that money in construction, it wouldn't be an alternate for Presumpscot. It would go back into the general pool for all three schools, not the bidding money, but the construction money.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think that the assumption is that we would do, alternates right off the bat with, from the collective, with the if there was any, sort of any money that we had because the bids came in lower, that we would look at the collective of those alternates, and the same would hold for any money that wasn't spent on Presumpscot. We would look at it at the DABC level in cooperation. We have to make decisions as a district about where do we spend that money in the way that makes the most difference for the district. So if we had, if none of that money was touched, then we would need to look across the three schools to see if there was, an alternate that we really needed to do somewhere else that we had not been able to do because there was no, because it was the fourth thing on the list when we were able to do three with the money that was saved. So I don't want to pin us down with it has to be spent at Presumpscot. If we're fortunate to not run into any eventualities at Presumpscot, but we do at other places, we have to look at this as a system.
It's a good point. There's enough flexibility in the schedule that we'll know the pricing for the base pricing for all of the three schools before we have to make a decision on alternates. Very good. Any questions on anything else? All right. Well, I'll turn it back over to our chair, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mark. And thanks everyone for joining us. If we don't have anything else to add or any other news or comments, I think we can take a motion to adjourn. We can there you go. And so we'll have a motion with Ann, and anyone second? Right, we'll do Jennifer, and all those in favor, just raise your hand and wave at everyone. Perfect, and that's unanimous without any objection noted. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. We got off pretty early, and it's, like I said earlier, an important part of the work, but probably not the most exciting material to review, but certainly important and good diligence to go over it. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great night.